such incredible power, Sonishka. You have to give them to the state. The people need you.
Hello, and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today, it's welcome to the motherland, everybody. We're talking about Superman Red Sun. Absolutely one of my favorite Elseworld stories. And we're not only going to be talking about just the movie because, here at the podcast, we don't just do a review. We do a discussion. So we're doing the movie to the comic book. What are some of the adaptation changes they have made? Yeah. What changes have they done to kind of modernize the story / take off Mark Millar's edgelord,
sand it off a bit,
sand it off a tiny bit, and what that means for the final product of the actual thing. So to go into it, I think we have to start with the comic. Mark Millar's Dave Johnson. It's a fantastic little Elseworld story.
Yeah.
Probably the one you know the most. Everybody when they think of Elseworld stories, it's either Gaslight, Gotham, or Red Sun here.
I feel like it's a lot of the only Superman book that people have read if they don't normally read comics.
It's true.
They probably have read Red Sun.
It's true. It's such a fun, silly idea that what if Superman didn't land in America, He
landed in communist Russia.
And that's basically what they talk about, is that what such a minute change could actually do to the world, and I love that simple idea of if that's only like a couple degrees when you're coming at at the Earth with a comet, with basically a craft, it's like a couple degrees. So it's like literally if Superman had hit like a rock, this could have happened.
If there was slightly more resistance.
Yeah, right. Exactly. If it was a cloudy a day, it may have landed here. And I love that idea. And I'm a big fan of Mark Millar. I know he's kind of an edgelord, kick-ass, this. What are some other ones by Mark Millar?
Old Man Logan.
Old Man Logan, which I always have a hard on for Old Man Logan.
I have very mixed feelings about Mark Millar's stuff. He has like a pull. He has like an edge, and tends to be what you expect from him. For some reason, him more so than other actors who are also known for edge, you could argue Garth Ennis and stuff like that.
Todd McFarlane.
His is the one that feels the most just all right. Okay, Mark Millar.
No,
okay,
I always
Mark
think
Millar.
that's the reason. Yeah, sometimes he's a little too on the nose, but I think that's the reason why he's the most successful of these guys who make these edgy stories like this.
Yeah, it's at least coherent.
Yeah.
And there's a point. It's not like what Frank Miller has become, where it's just a bunch of mad ramblings on a page.
Yeah, it's like everybody's been a Frank Miller fan at one time when they read Dark Knight Returns the first time, and then you go to read anything else other than Sin City and 300, and you're like,
pretty much.
Hard Boiled too. Never discredit Hard Boiled.
Basically,
guys, if you never read fucking Hard Boiled,
wouldn't you argue just anything after the 80s?
Yeah, I think after the cocaine. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. I'm just saying it's the 80s. But I think that that Mark Millar is the child of that generation, and we have our children of that. Of Mark Millar's generation.
It just goes all over the place. I like Red Sun. I like Old Man Logan. Never really been big on Kick-Ass. I don't hate it. Yeah. And then there's stuff
I like the book more than the movie. To be fair, but the book can be more wild, and I think that's always where I think Mark Millar flourishes, is in comic book form, is that he can be as wild as he can possibly.
I'm also not crazy about the Ultimates. He also wrote that too.
Oh right, the Ultimates. Jeez. So basically, you go into this book and. This is not the first Elseworld story that's ever come out. No. Definitely not. It's been happening forever and ever. What if Superman did this? What if blah 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 blah? It's a classic like comic book trope. But what I love about Red Son is it's a complete story, you know, like, and at the time it was a great little miniseries, and you know, like, this is it's such an interesting idea, but when you read it, it's just kind of like you're like, oh yeah, of course, yep, Lex Luthor's on the other side, he's American. You're like, all right, you're like, I'm with that.
We were discussing this like over the course of like watching the film. It feels the most reasonable or like feasible amongst Elseworlds stories like this, because oftentimes it tends to be like, what if Superman landed here? And then it really just touches on like the superficial stuff, but doesn't really get into like the real meat of how the circumstances around the lore would actually change.
Yeah, exactly.
And this really actually gets dense with that.
And that's why I think this shines above, is that it goes deep on, and that's why I think the book is, if you want to go deep in the lore of like what happens when you have a Russian Superman, the book might be more your thing than the movie, because it's allowed to go deep on the changes to the characters. Yeah. I think the movie is, I think we shouldn't jump into the movie just yet, but basically the movie, it does kind of, how do you say it? What did you say? Streamline it? They streamline it.
Yeah,
you know?
that'd probably be the perfect word to describe it.
They streamline it so they don't go deep on Green Lantern. They don't go deep on the changes to Batman. They make some small changes.
Red Son's not a particularly long book.
Only
but
5
it is,
issues.
Yeah,
in the
but it is
run.
Still a little dense.
Yeah.
And given not only the budget, but the time frame that these movies tend to be made, where they usually only have like an 80 to 90 minute runtime at absolute most. Otherwise, they split it in half and make it 2 movies, which you don't really need for Red Son.
Yeah, nope.
Then it's just it conforming to like the different like medium. This is sort of the issue, to a lesser extent, that like All-Star Superman had.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this is a shorter book, so it's able to cover more ground.
Yeah, I feel like All-Star Superman, the problem is that it's such a short format.
Yeah.
I feel like Red Son,
everything about
want it to be this contained.
Everything about it, like, it actually translates pretty well, despite of like how Grant Morrison that book is.
Yeah.
It's just like the voice cast is really good. Like Frank Quitely's like art style actually translates fairly well to like animation. They kept like the character designs and like these shapes, everything's sort of rounded. But the problem is the movies are just too short. They like cut out essential chapters.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand them in the context of All-Star skipping like the Jimmy Olsen becoming Doomsday stuff.
Yeah.
I could see that being like, do we really need that? But they cut out like the Bizarro planet and Superman going back in time for Paul Kent. I'm like, you can't cut that one.
Yeah, you're like,
the Bizarro planet I sort of get. But the Pa Kent chapter is essential in that book.
Yeah.
Like, why did you cut that out?
Yes, it's so... And that's the thing, is I feel like with Red Son, we have a more complete package in book form and in movie form. I think both are more condensed than what All-Star Superman or these other books try to do. Because they kind of go big, you know, like, and with Red Son, it can go big with remaining in a one shot, you know, like... And that's what I think is so effective about it, is that it's a one-shot, but you feel like you entered this whole universe that was separate and moved forward.
And this is kind of the thing that I've missed from the DC animated films, because when they started out, they were all meant to be standalone features that were specific adaptations of separate books, even if those books did take place in the mainstream DC universe or not. And I missed the idea. It was just like, oh, we're adapting this. And they would always try to, like, replicate what the art style of the book was to make it conform to animation. Like, some of them translated super well. Like, All-Star Superman was a surprising one. Or, like, Batman, Superman, Public Enemies translated really well.
Really well.
Ed McGuinness's art style for the book was pretty much one-to-one in the movie.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then afterwards, we started to get the more like New 52 adaptations, and they focus on a contained universe, and the more self-contained stuff was kind of pushed to the back burner, but now they're trying to get back into the more standalone stuff.
Which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to keep seeing some New 52 stories, and I feel like there's some that they've just missed out on. Like, I know they're working on Court of Owls. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But I need that shit. And I need that shit to be good. I'll be angry if
because
that
Batman versus Robin wasn't it?
No, that wasn't it. yeah, right? Like, you're just
That's
saying...
That's sort of been my thing with, like, these New 52 adaptations up until that point, is that, one, when they do actually adapt a New 52 story, they don't adapt it well.
Yeah.
And then, when they're not doing
I don't
that...
know, the Throne of Atlantis stuff...
Throne of Atlantis was pretty well done.
Yeah.
And then when they don't adapt a New 52 story, what they do is they just take classic stories and try to make it conform to, like, a New 52 style. They did it with Hush. They did it with Death of Superman. And, I mean, Death of Superman sucks anyway, but if I wanted to see an animated movie of it, I wanted it to be 90s as hell.
Yeah.
Instead in the same way that, like, the Dark Knight Returns 2 movies, like, tried to be an 80s movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if they had changed something as dramatic as that, you know, like, it wouldn't work. And that's I tried watching a little bit of the Death of Superman one, and I was just like, why did they waste their fucking time?
I just had I had no interest in it if it wasn't going to be 90s as hell. And plus, I was getting real tired of, like, their version of, like, the New 52 inspired universe, especially Jason O'Mara's Batman.
I don't care. I liked what they were up to. I think it was cool that we were kind of, like, tying it into recent books, so people would be like, wow, cool, I should check out this book, because that movie was fucking dope. And, like, and you could be like, well, here's the consequences after that in book form, you know? Like, I like their idea of that, but yes, I think that stepping away to doing self-contained movies will obviously be more profitable.
Yeah.
For them. Like, there's no question.
And I just didn't like established books trying to conform to, like, the New 52 sensibilities. Like, I don't need a Jason O'Mara Batman Hush movie.
Yeah.
I don't like Jason O'Mara's Batman anyway.
No?
No, I really don't.
I think he's fine.
I thought he was fine, like, when he first came on the scene with, like, Justice League War and stuff.
Yeah.
But every subsequent film, I'm just like, he just has no oomph to him.
Well, it's hard to compete with fucking Kevin Conroy, but, like...
It doesn't necessarily have to be Kevin Conroy. Plenty of other voices have been good.
They've done a great job.
Yeah, not only in TV, but those specific DC movies as well.
Absolutely.
Like, Peter Weller was great as an old Bruce in Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah,
and Bruce Greenwood from Under the Red Hood. Like, it doesn't have to be Conroy. It can still be good, but there's just an oomph missing from Jason O'Mara. He's a very generic-sounding Batman to me.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you have that one. Because, he's fine, but, you know, like, there's a reason why they bring Kevin Conroy back when they need the voice.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, when they want to push that, you know, like, I think, just to bring up the Batman voice actor in Red Sun here,
Roger Craig Smith, who also voiced him in Arkham Origins,
and he's fucking Sonic, which connected to a previous episode. Check out our Sonic the Hedgehog episode. I think he does a great job here. I think that he's a solid Russian Batman.
The voice cast across the board for the movie is damn good.
It is. I'm actually really quite impressed. I think that as Lex,
Diedrich Bader
is really solid. Like, he comes across as, you know, he's a comedy actor, and, you know, I've been hearing him since what's the Drew Carey show?
Yeah,
like, you know, like I grew up watching the Drew Carey show, so, like, that's sort of what I hear from him. But like, he's such a good voice actor that he's able to change his voice, and he's able to get the authority of Batman the Brave and the Bold here, but the snark that is, like, himself in also, you know, like, and I think that's what makes it Lex Luthor.
And that fits, like, especially this particular version of Lex.
Yeah, exactly. This, like, cocky American, like, 25 steps ahead of the Superman.
It's actually a great foil to Jason Isaacs' Superman, who's played very straight. Yeah. I love Jason Isaacs.
I know.
I'm pretty sure I brought it up on an episode before. I've always liked him as an actor. He's like my dream casting for Ra's al Ghul.
You got me there.
I
mean, cast that movie now.
He's Lucius Malfoy. Of course he'd make a good Ra's al Ghul. And he actually voiced him once in Under the Red Hood. I'm just like, just one step closer.
I think that Jason Isaacs does a fantastic job as a Russian Superman. Like, sure, he's not Russian himself, like he's Eastern European though, and like
and I can't really judge how accurate or inaccurate the accent might be.
Yeah,
because
I don't think he's hamming it up though.
Yeah,
I think he's doing a very down to earth, version of this, and it works.
Yeah, it's definitely not trying to go hammy.
Yeah,
but
or just being like, I'm just going to go with American accent and just fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm glad he goes with the Russian.
But I can't really judge it as far as its accuracy is concerned, because I don't really hear enough Russian. I'm not educated enough to see how accurate it is. Because I remember like Age of Ultron came out.
Yeah.
And people would like make fun of Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson's like,
oh my god, yeah, right.
Russian
they
accents.
Were so bad because they're just like, brother, you know, like that's.
You didn't see that coming.
Yeah, like they go into like a Jamaican thing instead of the Russian.
It does
like,
kind of sound vaguely Jamaican, but I also don't know how accurate that is. Really, I've never heard a Russian person come out and say, just like, oh, those are actually
I'm from
pretty
Hampton
good.
Beach. There's a lot of Russians in Hampton Beach that take it, that they work all over the beach. So I've heard a lot of Russians in my time, but I've worked with a lot of Russians. I think that he does a good job here. He's not offensive because that's what it could have been. It could have been like, why didn't you cast an actual Russian actor for this? You know, like, but Jason Isaac, I feel like, does a good job here. Really sells the whole thing and gives this nobility to Superman, which is always needed. You know, like there's a reason why they pick the actors they do to play Superman. You know, like there's a nobility to their voices. Brian Daly, who plays Superman.
It was Tim Daly in the animated series, and then in Justice League it was his name just escaping me right now. He's fucking Sephiroth.
Yes, Sephiroth.
George Newbern.
George Newbern. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All those guys, there's a reason why you hear them and you think Superman, you know, like, and Jason Isaacs here, even though he's doing a Russian Superman, you still feel that, like, warmth in him. You still feel
really,
that, like,
Jason Isaacs tends to have like a very dour voice.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it specifically works for this version of Superman.
Yeah.
In a way,
sternish.
In a way, I think like a more traditional Superman voice wouldn't really work for this interpretation of the character.
Exactly.
Except maybe like George Newbern, because he's played like 5 different versions of an evil Superman.
Yeah,
from like
he's got it.
Yeah, Justice League, he's the Justice Lords. He's like the Injustice Superman too, so he has some experience.
He's got it. He's got it figured out. So, they do I think the rest of the cast is rounding out is just a fantastic job. Of course, you love to see Phil LaMarr as
John Stewart for like a little wink nudge. Amy Acker plays Lois Lane. If anyone listening to this is like a Buffy and Angel fan, she was Fred on Angel.
Oh, there you go.
And she was also Huntress in Justice League Unlimited.
Oh, okay. I knew the voice. Yeah. I was like, I know her. Like,
Justice League Unlimited has like a lot of Joss Whedon alumni.
Yeah,
specifically from like Buffy and Angel.
Makes sense. But going back to the comic, I think that this is it's one of my favorite Elseworld stories because it feels so purposeful. And I think that most of the time when they're making an allusion to something like the Bizarro being added to the story, it feels motivated and makes sense with the universe instead of just being like, okay, now if Superman lands in Gotham and he becomes Batman, that makes Lex Luthor Joker, and then Lex Luthor Joker's a smart Joker.
Yeah,
speeding
bullets.
Speeding bullets.
Which is a fun story for what it is, because there's always going to be something inherently fun about just like, what if Superman landed in Gotham?
Yeah, what if this happened?
And he was like taken in by the Waynes and he became Batman. But the problem is it all goes for like superficial parallels, like you said, with like Lex becoming the Joker.
Exactly.
Which is just too obvious. It's just there because Batman, this version of Batman needs a Joker. Whereas if you actually think about it, it's like, no, Lex wouldn't really become Joker. He would just still be Lex, just a slightly different version of Lex.
The changes that are here feel motivated instead of just cosmetic. And I think that's why Red Sun will always reign above most of these Elseworld stories, is that they're not just being like, so if this happens, then that must happen, right? And you're like, oh, fanfic is awesome, bruh. Like, that's not what we're going for here. The changes need to feel
organic
and actually thought out. You know, like that's what a good director / writer does is help you feel like everything is motivated. You know, like and
it's interesting because It's like Mark Millar, as much as he's known for like his edginess, seems, at least in any Superman story he's written, seems to have like a particular soft spot for Superman.
He's got a huge soft spot for Superman. He's all like, and that's why I think he takes him so far in the book than they do in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like they send him too crazy because in Mark Millar's mind, Superman couldn't do this unless he was truly evil or lost his freaking mind. Like that's the only reason why he would be like this instead of like, instead of it. The movie, I feel like, gives you the impression of this is a story of what happens when a man has absolute power, that even Superman can't even stand up to absolute power in the face of government. But that's not really the story of Red Sun. It's the comic book. The Red Sun comic book is more just like,
it's definitely in there, but it's not like the main thematic through line like it is in the film.
It's more just like, in the book, it's more like, what is freedom? And you're just like,
it's a little more deeper, a little more existential, and a lot more bleak, especially concerning the ending.
Yes. And I think you said that's your favorite part of this, the ending of Red
That
Sun.
is one of my favorite parts.
Spoilers, guys.
Yeah,
obviously.
Spoilers for this 30-year-old book.
Yeah, seriously.
One of my favorite things about the ending is just how bleak it is.
Yeah.
Because there's like a glimmer of hope, and it's something that the movie does because it doesn't have like that epilogue in it where we actually see Krypton in the book, and it's revealed that this version of Krypton is actually just Earth in the future, and this version of Jor-El is actually a descendant of Luthor. And they're the ones, because the Earth is at the brink, because they still didn't work things out, they send Superman back in time to try and reshape history, which eventually just becomes the Superman and Red Sun that we already read about. So it's just this predestination loop. It's just like a cycle of suffering that just perpetuates itself. You're like, damn.
And I love that because it kind of loops the universe off in a comic book sense too. It kind of like, in a comic book sense, it's like, hey, you can't touch this universe, it's done,
it's in its own little like it's time locked.
It's time locked, exactly. And so you can only pull out Red Sun Superman to fight in crossovers. That's it. And I think that's a great thing because this is a universe that doesn't need to be further exploited. Is the only thing I would say, because like there's no reason for Red Sun 2.
It kind of ticks all the boxes. Like you could argue, it's like, well, what about a different version of the character? But because they address so many other things, like you don't need to worry and wonder about like, what is this universe's version of Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern? Because they just do it. And they definitely cut back on it in the movie, but they did still give you all of those guys. Like they changed it a little bit. Diana especially has a bigger role in the book. Like they're not afraid to like cut back to like stuff on Themyscira for like the political nuance and stuff, like with negotiations. Themyscira has an embassy in the book that's mentioned in the film, but we never actually see it.
And I feel like in the movie it's all very like it's got to be streamlined.
It's very cut and dry.
It's got to be moving forward. I like the changes to Batman that they've done from the movie to the book, or the book to the movie. The book, he is another highborn of high society, but he's pissed because he was going to kind of rise to power / was pissed because his parents are gone, and he's just like pissed at Superman for being Superman.
Kind of like Batman does.
Kind of like Batman does. In the book, that's kind of his motivation, and I always never loved that. I never loved this like bratty highborn Bruce Wayne. I always like this Bruce Wayne that doesn't really want to be in the highborn society.
If it gave more of an indication as to what separates like American rich Bruce Wayne to like Russian rich Bruce Wayne and why he went down a different path, maybe. But it's more just like, it just feels like commentary, just like, rich boy.
Rich boy. And that's why I like the change to the movie so much more. It feels way more motivated. You meet a young Bruce Wayne in the Gulags when Superman breaks into the Gulags when he first learns about it from Lois Lane, and he goes in and he just like cracks it all open, and there's Bruce Wayne sitting next to, or whatever they want to call him in the book, like in the movie, sitting next to his dead parents, you know, like, and accusing Superman. And it's like, this is way more powerful than like, than I'm a rich boy who's pissed that you're just the strongest dude in the world. Like, fuck you, strong dude. Like, it's, I just...
This town ain't big enough for two strong-chinned men with black hair.
Yeah, it's just... And Mark Millar didn't have too much nuance. Like, he tries to, but it doesn't... I don't think it strikes what they strike here, where it's like, this is the... Batman is a product of the past suffering of the regime, but Superman has done nothing to actually change that suffering. He just rebranded it, you know? Like, and I feel like that's a wee bit more poignant than, like... it's just taking down the bourgeoisie at the end. Yeah, with Superman, it just and the Batman.
I suppose it reminds me a little bit about the way like Miller portrays Superman in The Dark Knight Returns, where there's that favoritism that you can kind of see on the page, where like Miller's clearly super into Batman, is not really a big fan of Superman. Miller might have the same, like Millar might actually have like the opposite thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, I haven't really read much of like Batman specifically by Millar, so I don't know like how he feels about him as a character, because I know he has that soft spot for Superman, but I don't see enough of him like tackling other DC Universe characters to really judge.
Yeah, I think obviously he loves him here. He creates one of the like silliest but coolest looking Bat versions in the entirety of of all comics. You know, like
I'll tell you what I love that's present in both books, even if they get a little the movie gets a little on the nose with like all the men with like Wonder Woman's dialogue.
Yeah.
It's like there's more to Wonder Woman than just complaining about men. It gets to be a little more nuanced than that. But what I like about both versions, whether you go through the comic or the film, is that Wonder Woman is the most incorruptible.
Yeah, which is
wild. The two versions,
you know, like because you always think of Superman as the uncorruptible one, you know, like, and I like that the balance changes here, you know, like is that she's stepped up and been like, nope.
Yeah, and they almost seem to like telegraph that she might be on Superman's side, which, you know, it's not uncommon. We've seen that in stuff like Injustice, and to like a lesser degree, we've seen like an evil Wonder Woman, like the Flashpoint universe and stuff.
They understand each other.
Yeah, but I like that Wonder Woman in this is just a rock.
A rock, yeah, exactly. Uncorruptible. Like, I think it's funny because in the book, they spend so much time with the Batman fight, you know, like, and in the in the movie, it's very much just like, here's a trump card, you know, like in this fight and they don't go much further after that with like Batman's uprising after his death. They like, which is obviously a part of the book afterward, and they just kind of in the movie they're just like, nope.
Yeah, but given it's just like, we only got 80 minutes. We ain't got time for every single subplot.
Every little subplot. But I don't mind that, because that, you know, like it just shows even further like Superman just like crushing these people. So you're not even seeing that, you know, like this uprising thing. The other thing that they dive deep on in the book that they just kind of shake off in the movie is Hal Jordan. I feel like they really go into Hal Jordan's character and how much of a loose cannon he is. And in Red Son, the movie, they're kind of like, Hal Jordan, you're in charge of the Green Lantern Corps on planet Earth. And they're like, cool. And then they use him.
And then they have a fight, and that's about as far as it goes.
As far as it goes. And in the book, I always loved this kind of like, what would happen if Hal Jordan was not held back by the Green Lantern Corps and just did whatever the United States military wanted him to do, and he just fucked the other like militaries up, you know, like, and that's kind of what they do here, is that they kind of let Hal Jordan be this cocky U.S. asshole and just like run around in the book, and in the movie they're just kind of like, he's a tool and he's used. All right.
But again, that's just a matter of runtime.
It is, but it's a difference between using one lantern and they used all the lanterns, which obviously I loved using all the lanterns. I love seeing Phil Lamar as John Stewart and Guy Gardner getting shit on. Anytime Gardner gets shit on,
it's going to be a good day.
It's a good day. It's a good time. I'm always like, we had to back it up because I was like, oh wait, they yelled out a name for who got taken down first in that fight. Who was it? And then I backed it up and I was like, it was Guy Gardner, you bitch. I was like, good. I always, if you fan of us from way back, Real Looks on Batman, I've always hated Guy Gardner. I think he's the worst Lantern. I don't think there's any reason for him. Another white dude who's angry is stupid to have around.
With his stupid undercut haircut.
Yeah, just dumb. And there's fun stories. The whole Red Lantern story, really fun. That's the way to use Guy Gardner. Not as a Green Lantern, because he's just another dude on the corpse at that point. He's just not anything.
We have way too many Earthbound Green Lanterns now. Yeah. Which, to be fair, if you look at it in terms of the universe, it makes sense, because on every other planet, they're
there's
space
4 or
gods.
5, yeah.
Yeah, and there are a bunch designated to each planet.
Yeah.
It was just Earth took a while.
Yeah.
Earth just took a while to get a few.
Yeah.
But now we have Hal, we have Kyle, we have Guy, we have John, we have Simon Baz, we have Jessica Cruz.
And then we have the new one that's out in space. I forget her name, and you're shrugging at me, so I'm gonna let that one go.
The only one I remember.
It's another human, but she's been sent. She's got a limited ring. It's interesting. So it only lasts for a year. It's not powered by her will, so it just does whatever she wants, but it only lasts a year, so it's kind of an experiment.
All right.
And she's sent out to another planet, and she kind of polices the other planet. So
the only female lantern I remember was Jessica Cruz.
Yeah, I love Jessica Cruz. I love all lanterns. I'm a big lantern fan. So that's why I enjoy in the book when they dive deeper on Hal instead of,
because Green Lantern is an underrepresented character.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that the Snyder Cut will be better strictly because it has Green Lantern in it, but I'm gonna say it's gonna be better because it's got some fucking Green Lantern.
It's at least worth half a point more.
Yeah, exactly. It's I don't care what your points on the movie were before, it's gotta go up a little bit because it's got a little bit of a Green Lantern.
As opposed to just the one tease and the flashback.
And you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
You're like, shit. You're like, that's all I get? That's all you're gonna give me? I love how the other we're talking about differences here, but I think one of the main strengths of this movie is how much it actually does stick to the plot.
For the most part,
it changes things and it moves the timelines around a little bit and it modernizes a couple things, but overall it pretty much is following the plot of Red Sun.
Yeah, any changes made are mostly just to keep within its short runtime.
Or
and to just
or
make
its characterization it's trying to do.
And just to make the narrative flow a little better, just given the new medium. But then there are also changes that are arguably for the better, like the Batman stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So it definitely is. It is a straight up adaptation, because there has been criticisms for that before, where sometimes they're a little too faithful. Sometimes I don't mind that. I remember that being a criticism of the Year One movie,
which is bullshit.
Which is just
I want fucking scene for scene animated Year One. I don't give a fuck.
That's exactly what that movie was.
Yes.
It was literally the comic beat for beat in animation.
And you know what? Beautiful.
Thank you. But that's why I like it.
But that's the thing. You can only do that for masterpieces like Year One. You have to, if you're going to be a slave to something, slave to the masterpieces, not the ones that need to be slightly updated like Red Sun here. Because as much as Mark Millar wrote this, 10 years ago, 20 years
20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago.
God,
16, 17.
Oh my God, I'm so old. But basically, back then, communism is evil. Evil. And with this take, it's more all politics suck. And we're all trying to be better humans. It's just finding what works.
And that's even present in the book.
Yeah, definitely.
Just given the fact that, even after Superman, hangs it up.
Yep.
And everything's supposedly fine once Luthor's in charge. You get to the ending scene with Krypton, and you're just like, yeah, we still ended up dooming ourselves.
Yeah, we still fucking...
We just found some other problems.
And, you know, like, that's not the worst, you know, like, that's kind of what, you know? Like,
yeah, it's a lot more cautionary.
It's a lot more cautionary. I like that. But I do like this kind of more thoughtful, less biased take on this. You know, like, I think that's what I would say about Red Sun. It's more like, hey, here's the evils of both systems, and the abuse of power in both systems can lead to these terrible atrocities.
Yeah, and it's
on
mostly
our
about just
humans.
like the failure of those in charge as opposed to the actual system in place.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think that it's nice that it's not just trying to be like, yeah, sure, but America's great. You know, like, that's the problem with Mark Millar's one there, is that, like, it's definitely like...
It gets into that a little
like,
bit, which is weird because he's not even American.
Yeah, right, and you're kind of like, what? Okay. Like, but like, that's kind of what the book is going for.
I think
like...
it's an extension of, like, the Superman we know is the way.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Instead of it being like...
And that's so intrinsically just tied into just like America.
We did it right, and we'll do it right again. You know, like, and obviously that's not always the case.
Yeah, you can definitely feel like the 20 years in between for like this book first coming out versus an adaptation now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's like it comes down to
but it's
that
surprising
Mark Millar can't see a communist Superman without him going completely insane.
Yeah.
You know, like, because you see in the later parts of the book, he's got like servants dressed up as Batman serving him. He's got all these like crazy things going on. He's like obviously lost his goddamn mind.
Which is definitely not only just par for the course with Mark Millar's sensibilities, but, you know, it's also a fair point of view given where we were 20 years ago.
But also, it's kind of like, as fucked up as it is, it's kind of what it's kind of a dark reflection of what Superman actually does in the comics. He's got a fucking Fortress of Solitude where he's got all these robots and trophies of people he's conquered and beat, all in a place that he like. So you see this here, and you're like, oh, he's now a narcissist. But in reality, you're like, well, Superman always a narcissist? Like, you're like, wait a minute.
Makes
like,
you question yourself. You're like, wait a minute, I don't feel comfortable with this.
I don't feel comfortable with this line of thinking. But like, it's an interesting thought that like, you see this and you're like, oh man, Superman's lost his mind. And then you're like, wait a minute. In the actual Fortress of Solitude, he does have Brainiac hooked up in there, and he does have a bunch of robots that help him, and he does have a bunch of trophies of people he's beaten, ripped apart, and fucking conquered himself. Ah! Like,
it's that interesting thing where just like, you make a change here or there, and we're on a completely different path.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, ooh, we changed the scope a tiny bit. And you're like, hey, you know, that's freaky. You know, like, and that's what I think Mark Millar's making here. It's like, sure, he obviously can't see that without him being crazy, but he's also making a point that, like, that maybe Superman was always sort of crazy with this stuff, you know? Like, you're just like, what is the point of a Fortress of Solitude? You know, like, you're like, if a man can hide anywhere in public, what's the point of the Fortress of Solitude? You're like, other than if you're hiding some crazy-ass shit in there, Superman? Like, and I know I'm sounding like a Watchmen character, and I'm just like, what the fuck you doing up there, Osmodeus? But
no, there is a point.
Yeah, there's a point there. You know, like, there's something to be said. I love the book, but I really did enjoy this movie.
I did, yeah.
I think that it does a good job of summing things up. The cast is fantastic, and it really fucking moves. You know, like, I think that the whole time you're like, ooh, and especially if you've never seen this before.
Yeah.
If you've never read the book and you're jumping right into Red Sun, I think this is a really cool movie just to watch, like, blind, you know? Like,
yeah,
this would
it doesn't necessarily, like, replace the comic, Because
Yeah.
sometimes I would argue, like, if you watch year one,
Yeah, you're
you'd
kind
be
of like,
you've kind of read the comic already.
Yeah.
Like, you have. Like, it's still good to read it, but you've kind of, that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
you saw it.
You've
You saw it with your
experienced
eyeballs.
it. Whereas this, just given the little changes here and there and how it tries to streamline what's a little
I
more
would say
dense in
you
the
should
book.
read both.
Yeah.
Read and watch the movie because
And I mean, that's essentially what these tend to be for.
yeah, is to supplement the already created product.
Yeah, and then hopefully get you interested in actually reading.
Yeah, and this book obviously started on my Elseworld. I have a bunch of Elseworld stories. I have a ton of them. I love them. And especially Superman because there's always stupid little changes they can do. You know,
I mean,
like,
Dark Knight Returns is basically an Elseworlds, and
Yeah.
that's your favorite comic.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All-Star Superman is mine. That's basically an
Basically
Elseworlds
an
tell.
Elseworld story.
Yeah.
I think that and obviously spoilers, we already said that, but like I think that what really makes a great Elseworld story is that it can have the balls to fucking kill a character or two. And comics can't do that obviously because they gotta keep making the money, so they'll kill them off, but then they bring them back and you're like,
Yeah.
so no consequences.
Use the advantages of the fact that it doesn't take place in the main DC universe, and you can get away with a lot more.
Exactly. And I think that
That's why I like how like experimental the Earth 1 books are.
yeah, is that they can change things without it being like, geez, why did you change these things? You know, like without pissing off the main fan base. So it's like it's best for the comic book publishers because you don't piss off those guys who are like, why did you change my Batman to being this? And you get to tell exciting new stories, you know, like, so I think that Elseworlds can be a fun device for comics to be able to do what they want instead of being like, oh man, I pissed off the fans and now they'll never read Batgirl again. You know, like.
But it's fine because this affects nothing. It's just in its own self-contained little bubble.
Right. And I think that's why Red Sun stands out is because they have the balls to kill Batman in both of these without it being like, oh yeah, but he'll come back, or like, oh, but he's still okay, you know, like they're just like, no, he's fucking murdered the shit out of him.
He was somehow sent back in time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, nope, he's dead. He did. Like, and they're not afraid to like bring out the big fucking guns when they want to and then kill them off, you know, like, and that's why I think Elseworld stories can really stand out and be as exciting as they want to be, you know, like.
Yeah, Marvel doesn't really have an equivalent to that.
No, they have the
Occasionally-
what if stories.
They
and
do
They had a whole
occa-
what if like line for a while, but it was single books. That's
Yeah,
my
it was always like a
problem,
single issue thing.
Is that I like
then-
that Red Sun is a full limited series.
Yeah.
You know,
And then
like,
occasionally you would get stuff like the noir books.
yes, which I love the noir
Or what
books.
was the one that Gaiman did? It was like Marvel, like
1602?
1602, yeah.
Oh, could I do a whole fucking podcast about 1602?
I haven't read it in a long time.
Oh man,
I would need to reread it.
I fucking love 1602. First off, because I'll read anything Neil Gaiman puts out. You're like, okay, dude, is that Neil Gaiman? All right, I'm fucking in. And then he's like, hey, I put the Marvel universe in 1600s, and you're like, what? And then he's like, and a few people are actually Shakespeare, and like, and you know, like, and he's like mixed it all in. The Queen's a mutant, you know, like, and you're just like, what the fuck? And like, he does so much great things with it. I would say if you're looking for an Elseworld story that's on this level of greatness in the Marvel universe, absolutely go for the 1602 stories.
But the point
not
is,
saying
like-
that this book is flawless or anything.
Yeah,
like, I'm
but
just saying it's a great book.
It's just one of those things where like
So
DC
fun.
really pushed that thing as a brand.
Yeah.
It used to have its own logo, for fuck's sake.
yeah, the Misfits.
Yeah, little Elseworlds logo. But Marvel tends to like, they kind of dip their toe in the pond occasionally, whereas DC is a lot more open to be like,
I mean, I'm
whatever.
really excited for the What If show.
I
mean,
yeah.
that's the big toe.
Yeah.
Is Marvel being like, we're gonna put out a show that's basically our What If series, and you're like,
And maybe it'll spawn it for the comics because, oh boy, does Marvel love making all the comics conform to the movies, which which is a hit or miss thing depending on who you ask.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, they did. I mean, to be Marvel's credit, they did when they did. What was the thing where they brought in all the Elseworlds and all the different timelines all into one thing, and it was Battle World, and they did.
Yeah, they did that, and I forget what the storyline was. That was like finally the crossover between 616 and Ultimate, and that pretty much got rid of the Ultimate universe.
Just like fucking murdered it.
I mean, to be fair, there wasn't much left to do with it outside of Miles because thanks, Mark Millar.
Yeah, thanks, Mark Millar.
Thanks, Ultimatum.
It's funny to talk about that on this, you know, like
you want to talk about Edge?
Yes, I mean that's the thing is like I'm a big fan of Mark Millar here, but then you have him as Ant-Man eating people with ants, you know, like
like making his ants eat people, or like an Ultimatum where like Wasp dies because the Blob like eats her.
Yeah,
you're like, what the hell?
What the fuck? Like, you're like, why this? You know, like there's a point where it's like the Edge feels useful and it feels directed. Yeah, and then there's being like, wow, you didn't see that coming, you know, like, and you're like, cool, like,
yeah, there are some
between,
points
like Game of Thrones early seasons where you're like, wow, that was a cool kill, to being like the end season where you're just like, okay,
yeah, arbitrary,
yeah,
it becomes one of those things where like when it's nuanced, it's really good. But sometimes you just feel like he's like giggling to himself as he writes it. Just like, and then Wasp gets eaten by the Blob. Aren't I naughty?
and that's the thing. It's like I see, that's the fun of comics, is that you could do kind of these crazy wacky things, but then there's points where you're just like, why did we do this? Did you have a bigger plan? Or is this just because of shock value, you know, like,
and that's always been like my problem with him, is that a lot of the times it just feels like shock value, even more so than like his general sensibilities. Because like I compared him when we first started to like Garth Ennis,
which is a master. Garth Ennis, ooh, bow. Like that man writes no wrongs.
Because he's also a huge edgelord, but it seems like there's more of a point with him.
Yes, he's always got something behind it. I mean, he's just Garth Ennis. Like, give him all the accolades from me. You know, like
I still haven't watched The Boys.
Me neither. I want to. I really.
I've heard it's great. I've heard it actually improves on the comic. I've only read so much of The Boys, like maybe the first volume.
Yeah,
and my thing was like, it was sort of gimmicky.
Yeah.
Or it's just like the joke was kind of like one note. Like after you got through one volume,
like,
you're just like,
isn't it funny that we killed this guy this time? You know, like,
just like, yeah. And the fact is just like, hey, it's the dark versions of all these like heroes, you know. But it's like really fucked up, and there's like fascists.
Yeah, and you're
just like, yeah. And it's like, but then the joke kind of wears off. But then the book went on for a long time. Yeah. From what I hear, like the show actually tries to make it a little more varied and nuanced. Okay. So I'm like, okay, good.
And I'll watch anything with Carl Urban in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, if it's true and it actually improves on the source material, or it's a better representation, it'll just make me madder that, like, what happened to Preacher.
Yes. You're just like, why? Why? Why can't we just do it right? Why can't we just follow the comic, guys?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be one-to-one, as we've discussed with, like, getting
Red
back
Sun.
On track with Red Sun.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's not a one-to-one adaptation, but it works for the translation into the new medium.
And that's what I think is... It's a little bit about respect, you know, which sounds stupid because you're like, fuck you, I'm making the art, you know, like for their perspective. But like, it is about being like, okay, we're going to make a change, but it's respectful to what you did because it's got faith behind it, you know, like we're making this change in good faith instead of like for change's sake.
Think about like the MCU. Yeah. In general, like Winter Soldier or Civil War, which you could argue are like those books in name only. Yeah. Because they go in very different directions. But they keep like the same thematic nuance and the point. They understood the point of what worked about those books, including like Civil War. Like Civil War, Captain America Civil War is a much better movie than it is a book.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
The Civil War event is a mess.
No.
It has really cool stuff
it's
in
cool.
it.
It's cool.
It has really cool things that happen in it.
Don't you talk shit about Civil War.
Civil War is a mess.
It is, but... that's the shit that got me like deep into comics was Civil War. So I will forever love it and slightly defend it, even though it is a mess.
Yeah, and a lot of people's first Superman book was Death of Superman. Frank, what's your point?
Civil War is way better than Death of Superman. Death of Superman's incoherent. At least Civil War, like, has something going on. Like, sure, it's shock value sometimes, but at least it's got something, like... That's the thing, is you probably just read the main books. You never read any of the supplemental material. You're judging just on the main book.
Oh, so I have to read the supplemental material in order for it to work on its own?
Damn
Why?
you
Why,
son
Frank?
of a bitch.
Why, Frank?
I'm not saying you have to. I'm just
The
saying
prequels
you
are
have
great, Frank. You just got to watch Clone Wars. Gotcha.
You son of a bitch. I'm throwing this red book. I'm hitting the shot with the Red Sun book.
So yeah, again, like, I don't hate Civil War, but it's just one of those things where, like, it has a series of, like, really cool individual moments that actually don't work as a cohesive whole.
All right.
It's an excuse for cool moments,
Okay.
even if it has to really contrive
will
itself
admit,
towards it.
I think that the consequences of Civil War may be cooler.
Yeah, the
than
consequences are
actual
cool.
Civil
The
War.
key moments are cool, and just the premise in general is cool. But the way it's executed, it's a train wreck. Aside from like those really cool moments you remember, Spider-Man unmasking, the iconic shot of like the repulsor ray against the shield, which they did homage in in Captain America: Civil War, but versus like the Superhero Registration Act versus like the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah.
Very different, but just the way it's executed in Civil War just seems a lot more feasible, especially for that universe. Like it's taking the same general idea on paper, like the broad concept, and executing it a lot better.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And it does
It's
far more with
but
less.
That's the thing, it works for the comic book because it sends whipples to the comic book universe when you don't really need that in a movie. You know, like you don't need whipples to the universe.
Yeah, I just feel like it does a lot more with so much less, especially given just like in Marvel Civil War, you have the entire Marvel universe like at war, at least on Earth, whereas in MCU we only have so many heroes.
Yeah, as much as I give it up to Civil War movie is one of the best MCU movies, along with Winter Soldier, absolutely hands down. Where the fuck is my robot Thor, bitch? That's all I wanted, and you didn't give it to me. And
No Robot Thor.
No, I want Robot Thor. I always thought Robot Thor was a sick idea.
I want a Secret Invasion movie.
I mean, a real Secret Invasion movie, not some weird offshoot.
It was kind of cool that they sort of reversed like the relatability of the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. That is one of those like movies positives that I like. That the aliens weren't just treated as like villains and they all had their own perspective. Yeah. That was kind of cool.
One of the only good things about that movie, other than Brie Larson being Brie Larson.
Brie Larson is a good choice for Carol Danvers, but when that movie's executed, exactly.
There's nothing going on in that movie.
But even beyond that, I want a Secret Invasion movie. I feel like that's... I mean, we only have so many other, like, storylines we can adapt, especially for, like, big event movies post-Endgame. Unless you
talk about there's always AVX. There's always AVX.
AVX, oh man, that's going to be the thing to bring in the X-Men.
Yeah, it always is. It's always... If they don't, it's a fucking waste of everyone's time. If they don't just like, hey, we now own all of Fox... AVX.
Well, because I mean, the MCU is obviously Marvel Studios is obviously just going to reboot the X-Men with their own continuity, and it'd be weird to just introduce them that way. It's just like, they're here, now fight. Just like,
now kick their ass.
I don't even know who you guys are.
Well, it'd be a great idea because then you could show how strong the X-Men are comparatively. You know, like, and that would be the fun part of introducing them in a big crossover movie, other than being like, here's now Marvelized X-Men.
Aside from that, you only have so many other things. You like maybe have Galactus, but that's about it.
That's not true at all. There's a bunch.
There are definitely more like big scale villains, but going from Thanos to Galactus, unless you reinvent Galactus to be a little more deep, is gonna feel more just like it's bigger on spectacle, but not as far as nuance is concerned. Because one of the biggest
you have the family drama of Thanos and his like actual moral conundrum instead of Thanos.
One of the biggest,
instead of fucking Galactus, which is just consume the universe.
You know? One of the biggest surprises about Infinity War and Endgame was how Thanos was executed.
Yeah,
because everyone was sort of afraid that it was just going to be another big like CGI Marvel villain with no nuance because the MCU struggles with villains all the time.
All the time. It's crazy that they actually pulled off Thanos being a good villain after so many shit villains.
And people were especially worried about it because that was their pattern, but we're also building up to Thanos for so long.
Yeah.
So to build it up for so long and to have that be disappointing would have really hurt.
Really hurt. Really shot in a wound. But they did. I think they pulled it off. We have to get back to fucking Red Sun somehow. I don't know how. But basically, I mean, to sum it up, I think that the movie is a fantastic representation of the book. At the same time as making some streamlined changes that I really don't mind at all. I think the book is. There's a reason why this stands out as an Elseworld story, and the reason why everybody's read this book is that this is one of the more effective, purposeful Elseworld stories. Instead of just being like, so if Batman was born in England, and Jack Rapier, the Joker is Jack the Ripper. Got it? Done. And you're like,
it all feels like copy and paste stuff, just like
paste.
drag and drop,
which can be fun. I'm not. There's a reason why I have a bookshelf full of the shit over there. You know, like there's so many things, you know, that I love about a good, solid universe change, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. We've talked about canon before. We go back to the definitive Batman episode and listen and talk to us about like. That you can do great stories and change things, and that's the fun thing about Elseworld stories is that they're able to be like, we can do whatever the fuck we want,
and it's okay if you don't like this version. Pick your poison.
Pick your poison. There's 1,000 more. So, guys, I think that's pretty much all we're gonna say about the book here. About everything going on. So thank you guys for tuning in to our Red Sun episode. Please check out the movie and read the book. And please, as you're doing so, tweet at us at I'm Yep Frank on Twitter.
I'm Mata Karika.
And of course, check out our site galaxyofgeek.com where we post all our episodes of the podcast. You can also find the rest of the episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts: Google, YouTube. Facebook, not Facebook, but every podcast platform imaginable. You can find
pretty
it there.
much.
But we do have a Facebook page if you want to check it out there, and you can talk to us and post there. But check out the Galaxy of Geek. That's where we post the most memes. That's where we post the episodes. That's where you want to be if you want the good quality internet content. You want to be going to our Galaxy of Geek page.
Yep.
So thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
See you next time.
Adios.